Chapter 3 Numeron. Quater decided to make a being of greater substance than any of his previous creations. Numeron looks like a pile of cubes. He was obsessed with being sensible and correct in everything, following the rules to the letter. Numeron rarely did anything on his own without asking Quater for his explicit directions. Numeron loved his crown and wore it with much pride. Perhaps a little too much pride. He made 300 duplicates of himself whom he would boss around all day, every day. These are some of their genealogies. The firstborn of Numeron was Nabris, a clone of Numeron. The firstborn of Nabris was Thopobene, the similar, then Libda, Massbeam, Mishmash, Hamda, Bim, Dad, Eatmat, Juder, Biggie Fish, Shaphan, and Hamdek. These were the sons of Nabris. And the sons of Thopobene were Narmiz, Jock, Gok, Wim, Nibi, Itchy-Itch, Kashi, and Chipchape. And the sons of Nibi were Abesh and Naded. And the sons of Itchy-Itch were Hafe, Ref Massenkrog, Adiba, Inkerkrog, and Ha. All these were sons of Thopobene the Similar. And Numeron was the father of Numeron Jr. The sons of Numeron Jr. were Limimba and Suppanuppa. The sons of Limimba were Zephiel, Loiter, Shohorf, Malagasket, and Harak. The sons of Zephiel were Namit, Ramo, Iphaz, Maytag, Zanek, Anmit, and Kalama. The sons of Loiter were Thahan, Harpenbarpen, Hammash, and Shasa. And the sons of Harpenbarpen were Pies, Bud, Labopunky, Nobiz, Hannah, Nashbagash, Reez, and Nasheed. And the sons of Bud were Iro and Mamo, and Nadal's sister was Annie Nitnitnit. The sons of Nashbagash were Alan, Nunyabiz, V, Labi, Yif, and Mano. And the sons of Nunyabiz were Hoxina Gik and Sot, the nephew of The. The son of Sot was Knock-Knock, and the sons of Knock-Knock were Narm, Nab, Narthi, and Nar and Reez. The sons of Reez were Nalbo and Nazazanatab. The sons of Nalbo were Zuh and Narakatangbalouf. Now these are the kings who reigned in the lands of Heka before any kings of the sons of Numeron Jr. reigned. Aleb was the son of Royandale, and the name of his city was Havtu. When Aleb died, Baburno, the son of Hiwea of Harzab, became king in his place. When Baburno died, Meshush of the land of the Nabatites became king in his place. When Meshush died, Dedah, the son of Dedeb, who defeated Nidiam in the field of Baum, became king in his place, and the name of his city was Theam. When Dedah died, Pihalu of Hackersam became the king in his place. When Pihalu died, Owi of Thothop by the river became king in his place. When Owi died, Nanabal, the son of Rabcha by the sea, came to be king in his place. When Nanabal died, Dedah became king in his place, and the name of the city was Eap, and his wife's name was Demethicone, the daughter of Padamate, the daughter of Obenzone. Then Dedah died. Now the chiefs of Heka were Chief Amnity, Chief Emoliant, Chief Thutha, Chief Hamabilaho, Chief Hale, Chief Nonip, Chief Zanik, Chief Namit, Chief Razama, Chief Linez, and Chief Mari. These were the chiefs of Heka. Now Numeron paid little attention to the beings he had already made. Rather, he focused intently on new beings to create and neglect. Numeron made Nabris' brother Abris, who was a pure-hearted, obedient follower, in spite of the fact that Numeron ignored him. Nabris became convinced that no one could be as good as Abris made himself appear, and he feared that Abris would eventually displease Quater, so Nabris, believing that Numeron was paying no attention, destroyed Abris by breaking off all the many antlers that covered Abris' back and neck. This heinous act did, in fact, escape Numeron's notice, but Quater himself was watching, and he smote Nabris with permanent blindness. Now the sons of Narcolon, the son of Numeron, were Limhair, Ma, and Diabulek. And Ma became the father of Badanima, and Badanima became the father of Noshan, leader of the sons of Narcolon. Noshan became the father of Amlis. Amlis became the father of Zoab. Zoab became the father of Debo, and Debo became the father of Es. And Es became the father of Baal, his firstborn, then Badaneba the second, Amish the third, Lenathan the fourth, Eadar the fifth, Mezo the sixth, Hank the seventh, and their sisters were Juarez and Liagaba. And the three sons of Juarez were Ashba, Box, and Lihasa. And Liagaba bore Muddy Bingpudi, and the father of Muddy Bingpudi was Jethro the Nabrasite. And Muddy Bingpudi became the father of Banana Grunt, and Banana Grunt became the father of Nosichluk, leader of the sons of Nodice. Nosichluk became the father of Amwat. Amwat became the father of Goatflem. Goatflem became the father of Dentrupshire, and Dentrupshire became the father of Cuptpt. And Cuptpt became the father of Vuk, his firstborn, then Hiwikun the second, Tahana the third, Biswick the fourth, Iada the fifth, Nintendo the sixth, Ngoink the seventh, and their sisters were Beach Noodle and Grahamlet. And the three sons of Beach Noodle were Corpup, Pango, and Quidit, and Grahamus bore Ozma, and the father of Ozma was Othal the obscure prince. Now the sons of Numerobenti, the son of Numeron, were Lintho and High Harry Hapsicombe, and the son of Lintho was That, and the son of That was Ath. And Ath became the father of Oprah, and Harry became the father of Mish Capiche, for they were craftsmen, and Mish Capiche became the father of Nadazruben. Numeron was the father of Neron. Neron became the father of those who dwell in 8x14-foot thatched huts and use pygmy shrimp swabs. And his brother's name was Enron, whose food had to be pre-chewed by Neron. Enron became the father of all those who celebrate Numeron's birthday parade, playing the Pingerkrog and the Nitoilibong. Numeron became the father of Numbi, then Numeron became the father of Nasak the Great, and Numeron was the father of Kilthax, who just sat there. One year, Numeron lost half of his beings off of a cliff. They were on one of their morning marches when the ground fell out from under one of the leaders, and half of the others followed before Numeron noticed their peril and was able to convince the rest to turn back. Though 150 beings marched straight off the cliff, not all of these perished. Many were some of Numeron's hardiest creations. The two that were the strongest and came through the fall most intact were Numbi and Nasak the Great. The fall landed Numeron's beings in the Trench of Aramus. There, Numbi and Nasak set up kingdoms, the twin kingdoms of Numbi and Nasak. This did not go unnoticed by Numeron. He saw that as soon as the surviving beings thought that they were outside of the presence of Numeron, they forgot him and his world. They began their own societies. Numeron observed their wickedness and saw that it was great. Numeron was sorry that he ever made any beings at all. He said to himself,
"Not only do I have to keep cracking the whip, so to speak, over these beings night and day, but to top it all off, as soon as I'm out of their sight, they forget me. At least I still have 150 to keep under my thumb, and believe me, I will. The rest of these I can destroy. I'll cause a catastrophic explosion throughout the trench. That'll show 'em."
But Numeron saw that Numbi was a blameless creature. Numbi was a righteous king. In fact, he was the only being in the Trench of Aramus that remembered Numeron. They called it the Trench of Aramus because of the swit trees that grow there. The actual name of the trench was the Great Canyon of the Ruins of Desolation No. 5. He tried and tried for 12.5 years to remind the subjects in his modest little kingdom about the past, but since Numeron would not take the time to make himself known, they would not remember him. His subjects thought Numbi was a fine king, but they would not heed his warning that their creator would not tolerate their corruption forever. Nasak the Great, on the other hand, did not think Numbi was a fine king. He considered Numbi and his preaching about Numeron a nuisance. Nasak's kingdom grew every day, filling more and more of the trench. The southern sector extended from the wilderness of Zinaflox along the side of Ibis Imperut. Then the south side was from the edge of Happenlanch, and the border went westward and went to the fountain of the waters of Neapthin. And the border went down to the edge of the hill, which is in the valley of Bonablink, which is in the valley of Bupabumjoy northward, and it went down to the valley of Daiswoonwang, to the slope of Unja Wapung southward, and went down to Bok, and it extended northward to Sabuta, and went to Soisinga, which is opposite the ascent of Intanina, and it went down to the stone of Ru, the son of Lu, and it continued to the side in front of the left-handed Fletchy northward, and went down to the left-handed Fletchy, and the border continued to the side of the Hogla Dogla northward, and the border ended at the north bay of the Stinky Sea at the south end of the Heliohagma. Moreover, the Heliohagma was its border on the east side, and the southern border extended from the end of the Stinky Sea eastward. Then the border turned direction from the south of the ascent of Ekakakanziba and continued to Xenoflox, and its termination was to the south of Radish Barnmold, and it reached Huz and continued to Itzebigi, even unto the great river that is called Miffelwimks the Uncrossable, except in a couple of places where it gets slow and shallow, and unto the Early Risers Clubhouse, and the border turned direction from Haywait to the Brook of Patiji, and its termination was at the sea. As for the western border, it was the amazing Colossal Sea, that is, its coastline. This was the western border. And this was the north border. They drew a borderline from the amazing Colossal Sea to Mount Petfilter. They drew a line from Mount Petfilter to the Hotus Kelly. Then the border went up from the side of Hintma on the north and went up through the hill country westward, and it ended at the wilderness of Canbans. And from there, the border continued to Quelp, to the side of Quelp, that is Refleclal, southward. And the border went down to Ateenmentshu, near the hill which lies on the south of Lower Surgert. And the border extended from there, and turned round on the west side southward, from the hill which lies before Surgert southward. And it ended at Sourbead, that is, Sour Nobel, a city of the sons of Mish Capiche. And the termination of the border was at Blytonsuch. This was the northern border. Now the eastern border reached the border of Edupated, southward to the wilderness of Brainworm at the extreme south. Then it proceeded southward to the ascent of Quelfrom, and continued to Brainworm. Then went up by the south of Radish Barnmold, and continued to Larry, and went up to Rabiaton Purchase, and turned about to Clarkstill. And it continued to Stewlumps, and proceeded to the Brook of Fothering. Then the border went up to Burn Daggett, and continued to the north of Undoubtedly Moister, which is opposite the ascent of Surmapleet, which is on the south of the valley. And the border continued to the waters of Hausenploop, and the border went up to the top of the mountain, which is before the valley of Twisted Balm, which is the end of the valley of Garantoff towards the north. And from the top of the mountain the border curved to the spring of the waters of Rankness, and the border turned about from Balaxix westward to Mount Desoki. They drew a line from Desoki to Shemp, and the border went down from Shemp to Reapley Engine on the west side of and continued towards Pilo Hilo Dilo, which means, I don't think I can put that much in my mouth. And the border went down and reached the slope on the east side of the Sea of Often Fallen Into. And the border went down to the Fibrillatin, and its termination was at the Stinky Sea. This was Nasak the Great's land, according to its borders all around. His thriving cities were all decadent and vile. But that is what sells. That is what the people want. Thus his kingdom grew, even taking in droves of defectors from the good kingdom of Numbi. Yet, still not content with his great wealth of power, riches, and influence, he coveted the dry, rocky land of the kingdom of Numbi. Nasak plotted a war of conquest against Numbi. Numeron saw all of this and knew Numbi's number was coming up. So he paid a visit to Numbi to explain the catastrophic explosion. Numbi was alone when Numeron arrived. Numeron wanted to speak to Numbi and his wife Grace, so Numbi went searching for her. The basement was flooded, so she was not there. She was in the attic, which in the kingdom of Numbi is called an Izathello. So Numbi found her there, high and dry. They went together to the patio where Numeron addressed them.
Numbi, I am going to blow up this trench with all these vile beings in it. But I don't want to destroy you and Grace, so I want you to build a treehouse where you can stay and remain safe during the explosion.
Numeron gave Numbi a blueprint for the treehouse and described the exact location of the tree he wanted him to build it in. He also gave him very specific details for the construction of the treehouse.
You shall make the treehouse from wheatbee wood. It shall be a split-level treehouse with an enclosed foyer, gabled roof, with rough-beam ceiling, bay windows in the living room and in the kitchen over the sink. All the measurements are here in the floor plan.
As Numbi and Grace worked on the treehouse, their neighbors, who formerly thought of Numbi as a fine king, came out to mock the construction of the treehouse. Numeron had given Numbi 7 days to complete the construction of the treehouse, and he was nearly finished. By then, Nasak the Great had completed his plans for conquest and his armies were massed and marching towards the capital of Numbi. Then, King Numbi and Grace entered the treehouse as instructed by Numeron. Numeron detonated the catastrophic explosion, destroying all the beings but Numby and Grace in the twin kingdoms of Numby and Isak the Great in the Trench of Aramus. Now, this great explosion had disrupted the deep panels of the world. A hot green substance belched forth from the cracks in the panels and filled the canyon. Numby and Grace watched as the hot green swirled around the foot of the tree. They were trapped. Now, Wheatbee wood is impossible to burn, so they were safe as long as they did not leave the treehouse. Many days passed by as Numby and Grace grew hungry. One evening, they looked out beyond the tree and sang this song to Numeron regarding their hunger. Numeron, send us food to Chumeron. Numeron heard their plea and sent a great bird to nest in the tree in which the treehouse was built. Every morning, the great bird laid a giant egg which landed in Numby and Grace's bed. They gently cracked the eggs open to find 5-course meals prepared, complete with a fine linen tablecloth and brass candelabra. They lived this way for many days until the hot green cooled to become just green. This new form of ground felt lovely to walk on. They lived happily for many ages. Grace died one beautiful day. Numby died 3 days later.